Now, may I invite Mr. Lakshman Jayasekara. He's a bureaucrat and somebody with a front seat on what's happening with the Western Region Megapolis. Over to you, sir, for some comments.
Thank you very much. Mega projects not only invested in heavily, big sums of dollars, but also it should have a mega impact on the society. So the government would be looking at the projects in the sense of that aspect, whether there is an impact on the society, the people, their livelihood and their income. And that is the way that we would approach the mega projects in Sri Lanka. We were listening to Mr. Hantian, who was representing the China Merchant Company. Now, I thought this is a very significant event in this podium also today. 3 years ago, I happened to have represented the government sector on the same forum on different subject, of course. At that time, it was more policymakers, the government bureaucracy who were in the podium. Today, I am sharing the podium with three the major investors to Sri Lankan mega projects. China Merchant, investing heavily into famous Hambantota area development, including the port, and Tata Group representative, my good friend Mr. Ganesh, and of course the China Institute of Investment and Policy Making, all represented by the China government investment portfolio, which is becoming a major feature in the Sri Lankan investment scenario. So this podium itself is a representative of what is happening in Sri Lanka right now, the investment climate, investor climate, and the commitment made by these, particularly by these two countries, are very representative. I would like to, however, take you through a couple of difficulties that the government is facing. Some of the projects that were presented by Mr. Dr. Keith Yan is more or less representing the greenfield development. The greenfield development is much more easier than developing the Western region megapolis. We are stuck with lot of people, lot of garbage, lot of congestion, and we are being told to perform the miracle of the Asia and perform the next miracle of the country. Now that's a heavy challenge. I wish I had the same opportunity like the Dr. Jian, where given greenfield development, I am asked to do the megapolis. I'll do that much faster, better. But fortunately or unfortunately, Sri Lankan bureaucracy, Sri Lankan investors are faced with a very difficult brownfield development. Brownfield is, just to share my thought with my good friend Sanjay again from Tata Group, they started the Slave Island development project, and that is Slave Island. A lot of people, a lot of controversy, a lot of conflict, but a lot of opportunities. And they took the task, we took the task at that time from the Urban Development Authority side. You'd have probably the Sri Lankan who are present here would witness how much great difficulties that we went through. But we are now getting it through. So the greenfield as against the brownfield is difficult. Now what does it bring to the government? Government has to be more accurate, more specific, very efficient. And they have to be, actually the operation has to be in a megapolis situation in Sri Lanka, very delicate. I would like to bring back Mr. Hantian theory of less talks and more action. And that he showed us a big board. I think it has to be a big slogan in Sri Lanka, less talks and more action. And that has to be accurate action and specific action and very efficient. I would leave you to judge whether the government and the private sector mean that, all that features. I think in the concluding remarks, it was mentioned the industrial relocation of the fourth kind. We are looking for this, particularly with the GSP coming up, whether we could really harness the benefit of the what is happening in Europe in relation to GSP plus to Sri Lanka, whether the megapolis can provide the industrial platform particularly with the industrial estate, lands for the next generation of the industrial revolution. Government and the government officials generally take the comfort of the fact when it comes to the mega project, be it a port, be it a harbor, be it a road, to hide in the loans, the international loans given by the World Bank, ADB, JICA, and the Chinese government and various other governments. Now, Sri Lanka, unfortunately, has come to the end of the road so far as the loans are concerned. So we got to go for the PPP project which are initiated by the private sector. But that is a very difficult process. For example, to privatize our LRT system, we have been running round in circles how to get the investor for this one from the private sector. We had two options. We had the Japanese government coming and offering a loan. I was witnessing our colleagues in the government sector are jumping and taking the government loan. Whereas we could not fulfill the entire LRT network which covers the western region by only a small segment of the loan. A small segment, by the way, is about $1.5 billion. $1.5 billion. To cover the entire system, it has to be about $5 billion. Now, the government simply cannot afford to take a loan for that. Therefore, we have to go to the private sector. But the government system is such that when it comes to the point of getting the mega projects, whether it is in the megapolis, in the western region, or in Trinco, in the south, etc., the system has to be much more open-minded and much more innovative, much more specific, much more creative to get the private sector involved. There, I dare say that the Sri Lankan private sector hasn't been that much helpful. They are mostly not representing the investment enthusiasm in the mega projects. This is something that I want to play with you today, this morning. We will discuss this further. They come with not as the partners of the many foreign investors coming in, but they come as the simple agents, except perhaps the companies like John Keys who are taking on the challenge their own. So I urge Sri Lankan private sector to be more proactive together in partnership with the foreign companies that are coming in. Dr. Kijian in his presentation again said, huge miracle is expected in Sri Lanka. I must say from the government side, we have put in place the plans, the programs and the action. We are not very happy about our own performance. We know that we are going through a very, very difficult procurement and various other difficulties and dealing with the general public, dealing with the masses, dealing with the support of the political arena. We are going through a difficult period, but we are ready in terms of the plan and some action, some legislation. So with that, may I just say the huge miracle in Sri Lanka is possible, but it's very challenging. So the forums like this must support the government in dealing with such situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. May I invite you, Nadija, now?
Thank you. From a private sector perspective, it's a very exciting time to be in Sri Lanka. We have a government which has articulated and conceptualized to some extent the development that it needs to take Sri Lanka to meet its vision as a regional knowledge-based hub that leverages its geographical location and uses its trade links with key markets. And it's been very, very consistent, the government, that it wants to do this development with private-public partnership and with foreign investment. I think many in this audience would be aware that John Keels is a very active and enthusiastic participant in Sri Lanka's economy. We've been responsible for some of the largest private sector investments in Sri Lanka, and many of which have been game changers in their own sectors. Our current project, Cinnamon Life, is probably the largest private sector investment happening right now, with an investment of over $850 million. We have in the past partnered with very large global international leaders in their own sectors, and we continue to be able to harness those partnerships. And in this current investment-rich climate, we're seeing a lot of interest in Sri Lanka from various parts of the world. So what do we, as a private sector, in this environment that is so rich and so rich in opportunity for investment, need? Chamindra asked me to spend a few minutes talking about our laws and our legal regime. The commercial laws in Sri Lanka are based on English law. They're very similar to those that exist in Singapore, for example. Our laws are quite robust. We have a new companies law from 2007, which is based, for example, on the best in Commonwealth systems. We have an investment promotion law which backs the BOI with a myriad of laws to give concessions for large-scale investments. And those laws have stood the test of time. They've worked well. So in terms of laws in general, we have a very robust system and quite robust institutions. What we do need is stability, transparency, and commitment. We look at the investments and development opportunities that have been identified, whether it is in Hambantota, whether it's in Trincomalee, the Western Megapolis, the expressways, even the industrial zones. But we need clarity as to what that is. What exactly is expected of the investor? What is the process to be followed? Bidding, as a private sector investor, bidding for an investment of this nature, bidding for mega developments, is an expensive process. It requires feasibilities, it requires you need to retain experts, you need to retain lawyers, financial models. It can go into millions of dollars. So to make that commitment, whether it's in resources or in costs, we require transparency and certainty in terms of the process to be followed, the timelines that are set for evaluation, and transparency on that evaluation criteria. What investors don't want are stop-and-start projects, changing goalposts. So it's important that that transparency and certainty be brought in, and I think Mr. Hang went on to talk about that in his own presentation as 3 key elements that he also identified as being required from the government. And to do this, we need probably to enrich and empower our local institutions. The government institutions which are driving forth this vision for Sri Lanka. And in particular, in this current climate, we need alignment. We can't have different institutions pulling in different directions. We need institutions to pull together, whether from the conceptual change. I think Sanjay talked about the fact that when we're conceptualizing, we need to align all the relevant stakeholders so that we have one vision that we take into the future. If there is one particular law that we talk about that requires some change, we should probably look at our labor laws and our labor policy. In this current climate of quite a lot of construction, we're having a massive surfeit of labor construction workers. We need to look at how we liberalize our policy of bringing in temporary workers. And our labor laws themselves, our labor laws are for blue-collar workers. Our institutions look at our labor laws always through the lens of a blue-collar worker. If we want to bring forth our vision of a knowledge-based economy, we need to then, I think, provide in our laws for the requirements of a knowledge-based economy, for things like flexible working hours, for working part-time. Doing something like that will also unleash and enable a large proportion of our workforce, or I should say our educated people, to come into the workplace. In Sri Lanka, more than 50% of its graduates are women, but we don't see them in the formal workplace. If we need to bring our economy and to where we want it to be, we need all those educated people to make a contribution. changing the laws in this nature, I think, would really bring more women out into the workplace as well. And we need to train our institutions to look at our labor laws not only through the lens of a blue-collar worker, but of industry as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Having said all this, I think there's an elephant in the room. Perhaps it's a dragon in the room. We're talking about the news today that there is a deal almost done on the Hambantota port. I discussed this with Mr. Hankton earlier, and I must say there are a number of questions about the vision for Hambantota. What can you tell us? What can you tell us, Mr. Hankton, about that long-term vision for Hambantota?
You want me to read the newspaper yesterday or today? Okay. So actually, I know that the people are focusing on the Hambantota project because it is, I'm sorry to say, I've been engaged with some confidential agreements with the government. But anyway, I should say the first one, yesterday's newspaper, and the news of today's newspaper, right. Yes, I appreciate the media that they respond very positively, and that gives me a lot of confidence. China merchants a lot of confidence in developing this project. I wouldn't say I have a vision in Hambantota so far, because I will let you know after signing the agreement and the agreement effective date, after effective, if I can. But I would like to make example that why we invest in Colombo. Okay, we are one of the bidder of 19 international bidder in 2009 when the Sri Lanka government tendered documents for CIC for Southern Terminals BOT project. So, but unfortunately, 2009 actually the global financial crisis. So we are the only bidder were left at that time. A lot of people just concerned about the returns as a commercial project. But we did the right decision so far. First one, we committed what we have committed. And the second one, we trust and believe our predictions in terms of the economic changes and the location that Sri Lanka have already had, and the manufacturing shift. So that's why we invest in Colombo. If we acted just like the other investors, we wouldn't harvest this project. I would tell you, CICT is not only the benchmark. Actually, we had make profit last year after his 1.5 years operations. I think that's why we invest. So regarding to the Hambantota port project, I think we do believe our global network and our expertise in port operations, and also this is not a port project. It is a kind of a transformation for the society. Especially, we would like to leverage on the port facilities to turn Hambantota as a logistics hub alongside the main shipping route. That is the vision I can tell so far. Thank you very much.
There's a question here, and I think this links up with a closing point that Nadija made also about the need for alignment of stakeholders from the very outset for large projects. And I'm putting this to anybody in the panel who would like to weigh in. I'm hoping, Mr. Jayasekara, you can also weigh in. It's about the Colombo International Financial City. Won't this create a conflict with the legal system applicable for the rest of the country if indeed the Colombo International Financial City will have separate laws that are applicable to it? I mean, if we are talking about aligning Sri Lankan investment, Sri Lankan businesses to what is already being constructed just a couple of kilometers from here, isn't it about time we started aligning?
Talking about the legal system here, I think anyway legal system has to change. If we have to accommodate the futuristic, innovative investment, currently what we have does not really support the foreign investment to come in, number one. To protect them, the protections are insufficient, and the taking over, the risk of government taking over due to the political pressures. Now all these things have to be taken out. So first of all, the existing legal system in the government in the land side has to change to get the investment coming in. Secondly, whether the port city new legislations that are being discussed currently are supportive of attracting the investment into that area. A real question would be whether that will be very competitive. It will be a threat to the investment in the land side. Now we have to talk about the land side investment and the seaside investment. Now what is far more attractive to the investor incoming? This is little bit too early to give a judgment on that. But I can tell you one thing, that is, when the investor comes into the port city, earlier the government position was that is giving it away to the Chinese investor. Whereas the current concession agreement has built in JV, joint venture possibility between the government of Sri Lanka and the Chinese investor. Therefore, it opened up a platform for the Sri Lankan side to be the beneficiary of any potential legal system or the economic system that would built in to the port city. Now the question is, how far government is going to use it? Now I have been taking part in some of the discussion that was taking place between the Chinese investor and the megapolis ministry. I was urging that we must seize the opportunity that is being created by the investor in the seaside to bring in the benefit to the government and to the people and to the city side, the land side. Now this is something that is novel, that is something new. We cannot pretend that we know all about how the threats and how the benefit could fall in place in time to come. So this is something that actually the legal minds should address, as well as the financial minds, and the private sector must address this issue together with the government, and government is certainly in the middle right now. So I don't want to pretend that there is a solution for this right now.
Can I also open this out to the rest of the panel? If we are talking about aligning Sri Lanka's private sector with these large development projects, isn't it about time some clarity be established about those available opportunities, the scope, the regulatory challenges, the legal systems available? Is there Chinese experience we can talk about? Is there, for instance, you talked about in Mumbai, Sanjay, what Tata has been involved in?
I think it's very important that the private sector knows what the rules of the games are, and no outside investor is going to take up large responsibility on their own, as I think was also mentioned by some of the other presenters, that they will have to depend on the local investors. And it's very important that they are comfortable, and it's on the back of their comfort that the foreign investment is going to come. So I think it's important that the local investors, the local business community knows that these are transparent processes, knows that there are remedies available in case something goes wrong, knows that there's a buy-in not only of the government, but also all the successive governments that are going to come in, which is not going to land up into a kind of conflict. They should not be in the crossfire subsequently. They should be in a position to take care of the local issues that might come up if there are issues of resettlement, because you talked about some of the brownfield developments. I'm sure there are going to be communities which are going to be affected adversely. How are they going to be compensated? So I think that's a broad rule of the rules of the game. But the most important thing that the private sector should be looking at, and I think they have to play a very active role in ensuring that, is a very transparent, level playing field. It's important that they get as much say in what's happening out here, and so that if they are confident, then I'm quite sure the foreign investor is going to be confident. So I think it's for people like us, the confidence of the local investors is paramount for even us to come in and participate here.
There's a connected question, and I'll just supplement what you're about to say with that. And this question is, there are very few transparent opportunities afforded to the private sector currently with regard to these mega developments. What is the experience in China? Is it not time to align everybody?
Actually, China's experience, because China merchants developed the circle, we are not only delegate a land, we are also delegate some authorities for governments, administrations, some authorities. That is, we work with local government, then have the single window for every investors. If you say Sri Lanka is transforming into a regional hub, I thought the port is the best place, best platform for a logistics hub. So if you say a platform, China merchants, if he do the solo dancing, I don't think that would be a platform. A platform means that you can attract different players on the platform. So actually, a platform needs a lot of investors. We can be partnership, like an incubator, like China Merchants in Circle actually developed China Merchants, developed the biggest private insurance company, the best retail bank, and also if a different brand. I think if the government can set some consistent, transparent policy to those people can invest, no matter he is a foreign investor or private sector, they can invest in the region or in this kind of mega projects. I thought that will be very transparent. Especially, I thought a lot of private sector would think the big investment will have some tax incentives. But I would say in Circle, in China, actually all private investors, they are attached with the China merchants' best incentives in tax and other administration compensations.
So investors had opportunity for a single window with China merchant essentially to invest there.
We did.
Yes. Was the legal framework in this industrial zone the same as that applied to the rest of the country?
That's it. That's what the lady said. Something you need to change the legislations. So actually, Circle industry zone, his level is similar to the city of Shenzhen. So we have our own authority to recruit any people we want. But in 35 years ago, that's not possible in China. But this is kind of exceptions. But basically, under the big law, the constitutional law, in the regulatory umbrella of the country. So something needs to amend to suit the trends and the changes and the development of the area, if you want.
Perhaps a model for Hambantota.
I hope so. We will work with the Sri Lanka government. We will commit to what we have committed. Thank you.
Dr. Shu, a question for you. You talked about the fourth industrial relocation and potentially that Sri Lanka, I mean, we can assume that Sri Lanka has an opportunity here to be part of that fourth industrial relocation. However, it does strike us that we are a small country with a very small population, you know, very different to potentially the situation in China when you had the East Coast first develop, and now that industrialization is spreading to the interior of China. You know, how, if at all, from your experience working in the region and in Africa, do you think Sri Lanka can strategize around the lack of human resources?
Everybody know there is a concept, globalization. But I think a lot of people don't know what is the globalization. Globalization means almost all the nation, country will take part in the world supply chain. Big country do more work. Small country do small work. That means world supply chain can be divided into different links. Like America, like China, can do a lot of link of the whole chain. Small country can do one link. If you say, I'm small, I can't take part in this whole chain, that means you were losing. So from this point to see, Sri Lanka have a lot of advantage. For example, you have very good relation with all the big countries. That means you can cooperate with the big country to set up world international supply chains. This is very important. As I know, the population very limited. I think at least you can do two things. First, using the location to carry trade. I think everybody know this word, carrying trade. And you also can use limited population and low wage to processing trade. Two trade include processing trade plus carrying trade. This is the one way for Shenzhen to success. So I think it's better, also best way maybe for you. Of course, to set up SEZ, take part in whole world supply chain, need a lot of work to do. Just I told you, 1, 2, 3 model. At the beginning, you must make SEZ law. As I know, I go to a lot of countries. The government officer said to me, we need set up SEZ. Then I ask you, what's the SEZ law? You can give me to show. They are very surprised. They have no law. And I'm very surprised. You have no law, and you decided to set up a SEZ. And then I asked them, show the spatial planning, industry planning. They don't know what I say. That means if you want your SEZ to go to success, please, according to my opinion, do 1, 2, 3 framework. Don't forget it. Thank you.
There's a question for Nadija and also Sanjay. How can we manage delays in mega projects which upset ROI of investors? Cinnamon Life and Tata and the Tata projects here are behind schedule. That is what it says here, and hence this question to get get your perspectives on this.
Any construction project has built into it, under international norms, processes for handling delays. I think anyone who's been involved in any of the large construction projects, whether it's in the port, whether it's on highways, are used to it. There's provision for it. And it's in the normal course of the construction trade. I don't think it's something hugely unusual. I don't know what to say.
Do you want to weigh in, Sanjay?
No, I think just to answer, I think learn from the Chinese. I think that could be one. So, but I think the clear thing is that when before you start your executing, I think you get everything in place. So very often, I think in the quest to start a project, for whatever compulsions there could be, we're probably not connecting all the dots. It could be the financing part, it could be the resettlement part, it could be getting the proper type on the technology part. I think, so these are areas I think needs to be tied up first before you actually start. So planning has to precede execution. If you start execution first and then plan simultaneously, you're almost certainly likely to land up in trouble.
Also, question for the two local panelists, if I may. This is addressed to Lakshman Jayasekara. It's difficult for companies to invest due to lack of transparency, corruption, and bureaucracy. What improvement do you plan to do to boost confidence of local investors? And I'm trying to link back to what Dr. Xu was saying about that 1, 2, 3 plan. You know, how ready are we? How many components of that plan, in your estimation, are in place as far as mega projects are concerned?
I think I'm going to respectfully disagree with Mr. Jayasekara to say that our laws are very robust. We've had a lot of investments that's come in already that are of a mega nature, and they have withstood the test of time. We do have robust laws. What we require now is transparency and alignment. In terms of the projects that are being identified for development and available for private sector participation, what does that project involve? What is expected of that investor? Clear clarity on that. And to get that alignment of all the stakeholders, so whether it is your trade unions, whether it is your labor force, whether it is the society around you, alignment, because there is some obscurity as to what these mega projects are. And very importantly, transparency of the process. How exactly do you go about this? And what are the timelines? What are the timelines for evaluation? What are the timelines and what are the criteria for evaluation? If that is there, I think we have a very robust framework that can take this forward.
Mr. Jayasekara, any comments? Do you agree? If you take that model that Dr. Xu identifies of the legal process and then leading to two other steps, do we have this in place as far as mega projects are concerned? Your estimation,
Nadija, what I mentioned was in respect of the port city. Here is a tremendous opportunity, in my view, for us to create some laws to get new room, new podium, new platform for the investors who walk into Sri Lanka without all the harangue of going through some 22 odd approvals that are generally outlaid in the current, for example, building approval or the project approval process. In Sri Lanka, you have to take 22 type of different different approvals. Can we get out of that kind of scenario in the port city? In the port city, when we bring in the laws. I'm not sure whether the current legal system is robotic enough to give the speed that the investor needs. For example, if you get entangled into any legal dispute in Sri Lanka, the God should save you, because it will go on and on and on, argument and debates, and the lawyers showing all their colors in the courthouse, but the poor investor or the poor party litigant has absolutely no remedy for their real problem. That's why the government brought in what is called arbitration. This is to cut short any dispute that may arise in the commercial law. But whether the arbitration has done their role, I don't know. So I still stand my ground, with all due respect to my lady lawyer representing the John Keels, that legal system has to be more robust, more expeditious solution has to happen. This is true in the case of civil law, criminal law, and the commercial law in Sri Lanka. This has to change. And if the lawyers do not agree on that, at least the politician has to go address this issue. I stand on that particular thing. I know that some of the lands that are held by the UDA are being, when we want to get the land back from an investor who is non-performing, he can keep the land and he can go on litigating the UDA and the government for ages. So the investment is suffering. So this has to be addressed. So that's why I think the port city gives an opportunity, a new opportunity for us to create new laws that are very, very attractive in the places like Hong Kong and Singapore and Malaysia, where the investor climate was very much helped by the legal system. Now, the question that I think you are going to really ask is whether the investors, the government system can be more transparent, efficient, and all that. 3 words that you mentioned. That's not easy, you know. It's not that easy to make a transparent judgment on a contract or a tender in the new system. Because earlier it is what is called unsolicited proposal. The proposal comes, 3 guys sit here and evaluate, and the award is very clear. The person who made the proposal is going to get the award, right? That is how it was. And let's not kid ourselves saying now it is not so. Now what happens is there are 10 proposals, and the 3 guys sitting here on this side of the government has to make a judgment, and any judgment you make is going to be challenged. It will be challenged in the media, it will be challenged by the politician, and it will be challenged legally as well. Now we got to get the bureaucracy again harnessed towards addressing this particular issue of the transparency in a transparent manner. So I don't know how fast we are going to do. The decision on the Hambantota, how it affected. Decision on the port city, how did that get delayed? And so many decisions are now going to be made on the many mega projects within next few months. How the government sector would perform and how the private sector would perform. I'm waiting to see, will you accept in the private sector or the foreign investor the decision melted out by the government? Definitely there will be challenges. So government system is right now in a kind of dilemma. What decision is the right decision? What decision is the transparent decision? And what is transparent for one person is very non-transparent for the other person. So we are stuck right now, particularly on the PPP sector. Our system is still in the formation. So with that.
Right, thank you. It's not the most optimistic note to conclude something on, but we are out of time. However, I would like to thank the panel for weighing in on such a vast issue. Thank you very much, Nadija and gentlemen. It's been a great discussion.